I started out working for the Lord as an evangelist. I had never read the Bible. This idea that, you have to be prepared and you have to go to years of this and that, God works with anything and everything. And if he can work with us, and I had never even read the Bible, the only thing I knew about were the stories for Christmas and Easter from my Catholic background. But I physically, myself, ever read the Bible. So I thought it was amazing that he asked me to be an evangelist for him when I'd never read the book. So I did. Years later, more recently, asked, why did you give me all of these experiences? I talk to other Christians. They don't have stories like this. They don't have, they don't have things like that in their background. What did you do that with for me? And his response was, well, you were so busy evangelizing that I couldn't get you to the books yet. So I had to teach you by experience until I could get you to the books. So much of what happened, I think not having read the Bible and not having been already cemented in certain doctrines and storylines and beliefs made me fresh for the actual reading of and studying of the Bible. And sometimes having little knowledge is easier to let go of than if you're indoctrinated and cemented in your own comfortable views of what the Word says and what it's speaking to you. You don't have to go through that. You're already preset for what you believe God will do or can't do in your life. And so it ended up being an advantage, but it certainly shocked me when he asked me. And at that time, Stephen, my marriage was dissolving. And so I made a deal with him, you take care of the marriage and I'll take care of the runaway hippies. That's the deal we made. And from that point on, I knew that I was in God's will. I knew that he wanted me to do what he's asked me and that he would have to equip me because certainly I was totally ill-equipped for the job position that he offered. And it just went on from there. He did heal our marriage, and we did end up having 64 years of it. I'm not saying it was idyllic, and I don't say it was easy. Many of those 64 years were long and hard, but at the end of it, every day I would tuck him in wherever he was, either at home or in the hospital or at the care facility as he went to bed, and we would tell each other how much we loved each other. And that's how it ended. Yeah, and that's how it ended.
Yeah. Well, could we go back to those early days and some of your memories of were you both kind of the same mind that you were going to join these other couples to move into this house together in Nevada?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I grew up in a community. I went to school in a community. And when I went to college, I was in a community. The first time I ever had lived in a nucleus family was when I was personally married. That was the first time I didn't live in a community. So you can imagine how excited I was when God said, I want you to join this community that's forming. I was not pleased. I was the eighth person, the eighth adult. I was the last one to commit to it. And I knew that. I knew that, the marriage was dissolving at that point, and I knew that I didn't want to go in community with a guy I was having that much problems with. But when the Lord asked me, he gave me a sign, and he asked me to evangelize with these young kids and join this effort, if I hadn't had a sign in the sky, I would not have believed it was God talking to me. Because that was the farthest thing from my mind when it happened.
Yeah.
And I go into more detail in the book. But
Steve was more enthusiastic about it than you were at that point.
yeah, he was already, he was kind of committed to it, but I was the last one. I was the last to accept what God was telling us to do at that time, directing us to do. And so I was the last one to commit. And then once I did, I was in 110%, and God gave us opportunities when the men decided after so many months that the women, we used to have a system in which one day a week a wife could go in and witness in San Francisco with her husband when the guys went in and did the mission, opened the mission up for the day. And each we would cover for that wife, her kids, meals at lunch, and whatever needed to be done, so that she could go in and have a day of witnessing. And because we were all doing that anyway, it already had started, and so the men decided that it wasn't advantageous, and it was getting dangerous at times from some crime that would also come around, and they just decided, which I also cover in the book one day, under the chapter of the Men's Council, they decided that we weren't going to be doing that anymore, and I was heartbroken. I enjoyed going out back into the city one day a week and witnessing there and ministering to the young kids there, and that was, all of a sudden it wasn't available anymore. And so that's when the Lord started bringing in the local teens, and they heard that there was a Christian community of people who looked like hippies in their town, and they were very curious at what was going on. And word got out, and we started having at the end of the afternoon when the schools let out, we started getting teenagers from Novato itself rather than the runaways in San Francisco. And soon we had a group of them saved, and they were committed and telling their friends, and we started having regulars come by after school and sit in our living room or on our porch and just watch the action and be a part of the action. Bring kids that they thought were ready to hear about Jesus. They'd bring them to the house and introduce them to us, and we would witness to them. And so that's when the kids in Novato started becoming a larger and a larger and a larger group, until by Friday nights we were the most happening thing in town. And we had teenagers in our house sitting on the kitchen, not the kitchen, but the living room dining combination area. They were sitting on the floor shoulder to shoulder, and they were on our porch, and they were down our stairs, and they were in the front of our building of our home, the community house. And that's when it got to be so packed and became dangerous, just on the volume of people in one house, that we asked the Lutheran Church in Novato, and they opened up their church to us on Friday nights, and that's when we started having teenagers stop by in the Friday nights and took the pressure off of our house itself. But there was no stopping God's will. He had us there, and he wanted us to harvest souls. That was the job description. And so we were harvesters in the field.
Backing up a little bit, there were 4 couples who went together in the house?
Yes.
4 couples. And you made a decision with children. And you made a decision to sell everything that you owned previously?
Not every single thing. I kept a few things. But as far, we were in the middle of buying a home in Mill Valley. It would probably be worth millions. I know it would be worth millions now. We gave up that house. I had a little Volkswagen Bug for me and the children and the dog, and Steve had a Jaguar, and he drove that into the radio station. We gave up those cars. He didn't have a Jaguar. He had a Mustang. He had a Mustang at that time. We sold our cars. We gave up our house. Steve gave up his position at the radio station. Rumors were around, and somebody at the radio station started one that Steve had come in a white robe with holy water, and he was going up and down the corridors of the radio station blessing people. My husband never wore a white robe in his life, never. He certainly didn't do it to the radio station, but he was a very successful rock and roll disc jockey, and he was in a major market, and he gave that up. He stopped working.
He was known. What was his radio handle?
Steve O'Shea.
Steve O'Shea.
Yes.
He chose that, and his real name was Steve Heefner, but he chose Steve O'Shea.
No, he didn't choose it. We worked our way from the smaller markets to the medium-sized markets, and one of those to the major markets, the 50,000 watt radio stations. And he had been using his home name, his family name, I'll call it, his family name, up until a point when he got to Walkie of Milwaukee, WOKY of Milwaukee, and that's considered at the border of a major market, and that has to do with the size of the audience that is available to you when Nielsen, I think it's pronounced, Nielsen does their ratings on how your station is doing. And then those ratings you sell to your ads, to commercial ads for the radio station, saying we have this much audience, and there are these many males and these many females. And so the program director, who was looking for an afternoon drive time guy, had decided that everybody at the radio station all the disc jockeys had to have Irish names. I don't know why, because Milwaukee is known to be a German, but he decided that everybody should have an Irish name. And so the name that that next hire was going to be O'Shea, no matter who it was that got the job.
How funny.
Then Steve got O'Shea as his name. Once you get good ratings in a large market, you don't change your name, because the ratings belong to that name. So from that point on, he used O'Shea.
I see. Okay. Now, that must have been something to walk away from that.
I can't speak for him. As I told you, I went in dragging my heels, and saying, I've been in community. I don't need to go to another community. But it was so overwhelming, the sense that we were supposed to do this for God was so overwhelming that there was no regrets about doing it. Just get it done and let's get going. And so there wasn't, there wasn't any hesitation. It was so strong a calling that it consumed your thinking and your dreaming and your questioning. All of that just kind of melted away when you knew that this was actually the God of the universe. This was actually the creator of heaven and earth, and he was asking you to do a job for him. How can you refuse, And again, if I hadn't had a personal invitation, I wouldn't have believed that he was calling me. I mean, a Catholic-raised housewife with a new young son. What in the world did I have to do with runaway teenagers of America? It was so strong a leading that at one point when I was trying to talk with my father, who I really loved and respected, and we had a wonderful relationship. He turned to me and said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I had to affirm to him, "Yes, Dad, I'm more sure of this than anything else I've ever done in my life." And he said, "Well, okay, you know."
That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Who caught that vision first among the couples?
I believe it was Ted and Liz Weiss, and the reason that we met them is I love this. Somebody a few years ago asked me, "How did you all four meet? How did the couples meet each other?" And nobody had ever asked me that, And so I started thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and it ended up being two women, Liz Weiss and myself. We both were praying for our husbands and our marriage, which we did not know about each other. We were both looking for friends when I had moved to Sausalito for Steve to be in radio in San Francisco, and I knew nobody. And I had a young, 3-year-old little boy, and I had no friends, no connections, nothing. And so when we did do this on the previous sites of him going from radio station to radio station to radio station, in order to kick off some type of social life before it was time for him to move to the next market, I would join the Welcome Wagon Club or the Newcomers Club, whichever club was in that city or that town, and try to find new friends and start having some kind of social life. And so I did that with Sausalito, and everybody who attended those meetings, Newcomers Club, they were my mother's age, and they were old friends with each other. And there was only one other gal there that was my age, and her name was Liz Weiss. And so just by being the only two in our generation at the meetings, we began sitting next to each other. We began to be friends. We began to enjoy each other's company. We had children the same age. Our husbands were both doing interesting work. Mine a disc jockey, hers a sail maker. He actually sewed the sails that the sailboats out of San Francisco used. And so we started being friends not only as women, but we included our husbands, and they liked each other, and they enjoyed each other's company. So we started doing picnics with the kids and that, and God used those two women, and that was the connection that brought the four couples together. And
Who came to Christ?
It was Liz Weiss and myself. And I thought back to the two women who were the first to know that Christ had been risen on Easter. He chose two women to start that off. And I thought I was really honored to be part of the two women. And Ted Weiss and Liz had a couple that they were good friends with. That was Sandi and Danny Sands. And Steve had a very good friend living here who he knew back in Des Moines, Iowa, named Jim Dopp, who had married a gal from Des Moines, but Steve didn't know her at that time. And so they were the couple from us, and so that made up four couples.
Do you remember when you moved into the house, the big house, together?
Oh, Mark. If I had known this was going to be important, I would have kept a note or journals of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Have you seen or heard of Larry Eskridge's book, God's Forever Children?
No.
Okay. I think you should look it up. I think you should look at it because it's going to end up probably being a textbook for that time and for that revival. I'm walking towards the book because I used it as a reference in my own book. Larry Eskridge, Eskridge, God's Forever Family, not children, God's Forever Family. I don't seem to have the page open right now, but I can go through it. It's called The Summer of Love, when it first appeared in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he says. Our forming of the community is the first chapter in his book.
Okay.
So I can look it up and make sure I'm confirming. I think it was 67. But if I find that he says something different, and I think he's probably as good a resource as anybody.
Yeah.
If I find out it's different than that, I'll call you back and let you know. That's as good as I can do.
Yeah. But when do most people trace the beginnings of the Jesus movement? Do they trace it to your house in 1967?
Yes.
That's remarkable.
Well, I was absolutely shocked when I went and figured it out. When somebody said, "Well, how did you meet each other, and what happened?" And when I realized that it started at my dining room table. I have a lot more respect for my dining room set now than I ever did.
In what sense do you mean that? What happened at your dining room table?
I told you that I tried to get a social life going every time we had to move different radio markets. And so I tried to kick off some social life, and I would have small dinner parties, and they would consist of 4 couples. And that's because that's as many people as I could sit at my dining room table, even with the leaf in it to expand it. That was as many as I could get. And so I had one particular, I would have small dinner parties, and it was the only way I could use my wedding, dishes and, silverware and all the fancy stuff I got from the wedding. You don't set your table every day with that. But I would have these small dinner parties, and I would get out my linens and my fine china and all this stuff and have a real nice, pretty, tablecloths and candles and everything. And there was one particular, when we had moved into Sausalito, and he was really new on the radio station, that he was going to be a success there, and I tried to kick off a social life. I had myself and Steve, and then we had Jim and Judy Dopp, who lived across the bay from us, as one of the couples. And then Steve had met an interesting newsman from his radio station, and they were from England, and so we invited that couple. And then I thought, I'm going to throw in kind of an artsy local couple that I had just met named Ted and Liz Weiss. And I invited them just to be a little different flavor, so you have interesting people around your table. And we introduced Ted and Liz to Judy and Jim Dopp at that dinner party. And that's how the 2 couples met.
Well, was the idea to move in together, was that birthed at that table also?
Oh, my God, no. No. That was just to introduce them. Then they became friends.
Okay.
And then it developed. By this time, Ted had already had his change, and he started talking about Jesus, and he started talking about the teenagers. And would we be interested in maybe ministering to them? And I told you my response, absolutely not. I'm not going into community with anybody. I want to get out. So no, it was, and Danny had been getting classes at Berkeley. And he ended up being a student for many, many years. He ended up being Dr. Danny. He's a psychologist, and with his practice here. He just lives about a block and a half away. But we started going to these potluck dinners over in the East Bay, where a number of families and couples and singles who were interested in exploring different lifestyles, such as community living. Nobody was doing community living at this time. And so we were invited to join this group of people who were curious about maybe setting an opportunity up to try a different lifestyle instead of what was going on right now. And so we went several times, and we would before we had dinner served or the potluck served, the adults would get in a circle, and we would stand, and somebody started in the circle to say, "Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior," and then each person would say it out loud that wanted to. It was around the circle, and there would probably be 25 adults there, and so everybody. And I said it when it was my turn, but I knew deep in my heart that it meant something different to them than it meant to me, and I didn't quite understand that at the time. But I knew there was a difference. I sensed it. And little by little, the people started dropping off of that group until we basically had the 4 couples.
Okay.
And we were the ones that ended up doing it.
So Ted was, you would say, was a driving force in catching the vision and of moving into the house together?
I don't know how specifically he had, ideas, but he was definitely the driving force to get the money secured from the ministers in order to sponsor the mission that we did in Haight-Ashbury.
Okay.
It was definitely that drive, and because he was the money man in the beginning, I think he kind of got the idea that he was the leader.
Okay.
But he wasn't my leader, and he wasn't my husband's leader.
Okay.
Our leader was the Lord. We did not lead a man. But he was the money man that got the ministers together and got the sponsorship so that we could go and minister to the kids in Haight-Ashbury.
Where was this mission located?
On Page Street, Paige, I think it's spelled. It's a block off Haight-Ashbury.
Okay. And what if somebody wandered in there, what would they see?
They would see a storefront, and around the walls you would see art, because Ted was an artist. He was a sailmaker, but he was also an artist. His wife was an artist. She did textiles, and their 2 children are artists. In fact, their son was the co-director of the award-winning Disney movie Beauty and the Beast.
Really?
Yeah.
That's something.
It was Kirk Weiss is his name, and
Okay.
that was the little boy that lived in the bottom of our community house.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So, what was your focus there?
Well, just what the mission was like. If one of these.
Okay, we had folding chairs, and we had like a banquet folding table. Those. We had a couple of those with chairs there. Some art around the walls. A couple odd chairs here and there, whatever we could put together. And then in the back, we had a hot plate and a sink. And I think there was a bathroom back there. I'm not sure. I think, there had to have been. And it was set up, I think it was a tile store or something years ago. But it was in a zone that in the city that was commercial, and then but like 2 doors down there would be an old Victorian house. So it was kind of in one of those areas where it was kind of half residential, half zoned for commercial. And we rented this one storefront with a big glass window where you would put your wares, in order to attract people to come in and buy. And so that's what it looked like. And
Okay.
Charles Manson came in one day.
Really?
Yeah. And
how did you know who he was? Or?
Oh, the guys recognized him.
Really?
When he went down there and killed all those people, killed them. They recognized him that he had been. And he came in with an entourage. He was very belligerent, very aggressive, verbally aggressive, very sure of himself, very negative. They remembered him.
Jay, did you meet him?
No. The women weren't going in there anymore.
I see.
City.
I see.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So, but say, during the Summer of Love, there are lots and lots of young people who descended on that area. And what would draw them into your mission?
Free food.
Free food. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we called the women in the big house. We call ourselves the Sweats.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, after Sandy Sands had taken the old station wagon and checked out 2 or 3 grocery stores for their garbage to see what there was something that we could use to feed ourselves and to feed the teenagers that were hanging around us and at the city. And they were wonderful, just great people in Novato. They in fact, when they realized what we were doing and that we weren't conning anybody, we were actually doing what we said we were doing. They would save things. The American idea of vegetables and fruit is that there's no blemishes, there's no soft spot, there's no bump on them, there's nothing. There's perfect. Betty Crocker taught us that they look perfect. But that's not reality, and the American housewife wouldn't buy certain foods if they had a little bump on them. They had, there was something that wasn't pretty, and so they started saving us boxes of those kinds of food, and they would carry it to her car for her, and that's how we got the food. And so we never knew when she finished her rounds. We never knew what the Lord would bring to our door, and and it was great training for anybody. Is you get unexpected elements and you make a meal out of them, and that's what we did every day. And so at the end of the day, whatever was left over and hadn't been used or hadn't been eaten for dinner that night, we put in a big. And you are too young to know what I'm talking about, but your mama would know. In the old days, they used to have baby bottle sterilizers, and they were long, almost looked like spaghetti pasta cookers. They weren't particularly wide, but they were long and narrow. And we would fill that up to the top with water and some herbs, whatever we had, and all the food that was left over or hadn't been used for that meal, and we would put it all in and put it on simmer overnight. And in the morning, it was soup. And then the guys would carry the big baby bottle sterilizer pans, and they would put it in the car, and they would drive it to the city. And then there was a hot plate in the back of the mission, and they'd put the hot plate, turn it on, and put the kettle on that. And then at lunchtime, you could come in and have a free bowl of soup. But while you were eating your soup, you had to listen to the guys read you the Gospels.
So they actually read straight out of the Bible.
I don't know, but that's how we did it.
Yeah. What a remarkable time. Did you have a sense that something was different in the atmosphere with a move of the Holy Spirit?
Honey, I'm Catholic. We don't talk about movements of the Holy Spirit. I had no reference point to know what was going on.
Yeah.
All I knew was my part, and that I couldn't stop my mouth from talking about how great Jesus was and the deal that God was offering them. I didn't have any reference. I had no idea. I didn't even know what a revival was.
Yeah.
Catholics don't talk revival.
But did others in your group have any sense that this was something unusual that was happening?
Yeah, we knew it was unusual. We knew that four families didn't usually move into to each other and then start evangelizing runaway hippies. We knew that was different and new. But other than that, it was so busy. It was so interesting. I'm from in college. I trained in sociology and psychology, and here I had a lab right in front of me. Every day, new kids from all over the country would come. The guys would bring them in for an overnight. And all of our towels and our bedding reeked of patchouli oil. I can't stand patchouli oil to this day because every sleeping bag, every towel, every pillowcase, every blanket smelled of patchouli oil because that's what they used when they couldn't get to a shower. And so we knew it was fascinating. It was exhilarating. It was enlivening. We were living the Word of God. And I remember the face of the first young man I spoke to about Jesus, and he got saved. I watched his face turn from dark to bright. And I thought, hot shit, this really does work, this is real. And he was Sandi Colebron, I have a vague picture of what he was, but I remember noting, wow, I saw a physical change in somebody's face, and it was captivating. I'd never seen anything or heard about anything like this before.
Yeah. Are you in touch with Connie Frisbee at all?
Oh, absolutely. Connie, I lost contact with her probably maybe 20 years ago, and I really missed her in my life, so I started telling the Lord, asking him, please bring her back to my life. I miss her. She's a wonderful sister. She was the only one, when we came back from the farm the first summer, Connie was the only one who would even listen to what we were trying to share with them that we had learned in the Bible. And her hunger was so strong that she would sit, when we would wake up, Steve and I would wake up and open our bedroom door, she was sitting on the floor, fully dressed, leaning against the wall with a paper and pencil in her hand, waiting for me to wake up so I could start sharing with her what I had learned that summer. And that happened day after day after day. And she followed me around all day long. We did laundry, and we didn't have an electric dryer, so we had to hang up the laundry outside. And she and I would go out and do the laundry so that we could have some privacy and we could freely talk about the Word and what I had learned about the Word. And I have never again found the intensity of hunger for the Word that I found in Connie that first summer that we got back after the way. And she will always be special to me about that, And yes, we are very close, very, very close.
You know that she did not react well to the Jesus Revolution movie.
No.
Yeah.
She, the women in this movement have gotten kind of sidetracked. We were there with the men, just as strong as they were. And she was like wiped out of the story. She was shown as an and others again. I always said my name is also many more and others because that's how we were depicted in many of the articles, which pissed me off because. She was as active with her husband. I don't know if you know anything about him, Lonnie Frisbee.
Yes,
there was
I've
a
written
documentary
some stories
from him
about him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they filmed some of the stuff in our house is in that documentary when they interviewed us for it. David DiSabatino, who did the film. But she was supposed to have authority to say that this isn't right, you need to change this, and then he broke his word to her and did whatever he wanted to do with the film and depicted her wrongly. She got like 2 scenes of the whole movie, and she was there with her husband, Anyway, she has been maligned, and people have written things about her that are very hurtful and very false. And she's gun shy, about publicity or talking to anybody because of the times that she has been misrepresented and misquoted and maligned. So. But she has a tremendous amount of believing spiritually.
I've had some wonderful conversations with her, and she's the one who texted me to tell me that Steve had passed away.
Yeah, well, this is me speaking. I think she's a prophetess myself, because she gets information from the Lord about people's futures. And she's always right. And as far as I know, that's the definition of a prophetess. And I think that's her ministry. And she's still an avid evangelist. So she's quite a woman. She's she's one of my very closest friends and sisters in the Lord. Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of Chuck Smith.
Well,
He did wrong by them. The stories that were depicted in that movie were not truth. He was represented as this kindly, comforting, supportive personality, and that wasn't who he was at all. In fact, he was very upset with Lonnie and Connie because the Calvary Church had just put in new carpeting, and they were dying on the vine, by the way. Before Connie and Lonnie went over there, they were dying on the vine. That church was dead. And he was concerned because the hippies all of them didn't wear shoes, and he was concerned that they were going to soil his new carpeting. And so that thing about in the picture of the movie where he's washing the feet of the young people and he's smiling at them, and there's a long line of hippies waiting to have their feet washed, and he's on his knees, Chuck's on his knees. That's all BS. He didn't do anything like that. He was what he did is he didn't want the dirty hippies to bother his church. And he was a piece of work. And I'm sorry, but I am not a fan of his at all. Even his son said that he was, not what he appeared to be.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and he didn't, all the stuff he built, Connie and Lonnie built Calvary Church because he only had a bunch of old people in his church, and half of them didn't like the hippies coming. So they left. So he was about a half a church, and they came in and brought the kids with them and the miracles and the healings with them and the publicity with them and the numbers with them, and they built Calvary Church for him. He never even gave them a salary when they were ministering out of his church. While Lonnie was ministering, Connie was going around the neighborhoods dumpster diving for food to eat that night.
I have written about that, and she carries some bitterness about that whole period.
Yeah, because he used them, and he was the adult in the room, so to speak. They were young Christians, full of spirit and believing, and he used them and manipulated them. And at one point, she went to him and said, you need to send us to somebody. Our marriage is in trouble. You need to take, Lonnie offline, and we need some counseling together. And we, if you want to save our marriage. And then Chuck Smith went into a story about how important the ministry is, and in other words, he told her, hey, suck it up, is what he was actually saying to her. Your marriage isn't as important as what you're doing in my church, so just suck it up.
Yeah.
He's a piece of work.
It's so good to talk to you again. I'm sorry about your loss, and glad to know that you are still in great condition yourself. So you have more years ahead to be impactful in ministry. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I keep telling, okay, Lord, what are you working on? What do you got going here? So, he mum's the word. He hasn't given out any juice at all. It's just he's playing his cards close to his chest right now. So we'll see what he's up to. Anyway, well, it's been delightful to talk with you, Mark. God bless you.
Yeah, good to talk to you, Sandy. God bless you.
Okay, and thank you for your interest. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, hon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.